Welcome to the Zelos podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, I invite back Coach Kelly Dormandy. Originally, she was with the LA Sparks and Loyola Marymount. These days, she's back to the home turf of USC women's basketball. Before we get underway, remember you can find out all about continuing education for your credentials. If you're an athletic trainer, physical therapist, chiropractor, strength coach, or personal trainer, just go to my website, rockysnyder.com. We've got online workshops as well as in person just waiting for you. Also, go to setantacollege.com if you're interested in getting a degree, perhaps a master's of science in applied sports biomechanics and movement science, or they've got one for applied sport and exercise psychology, as well as sports injury and return to performance management and performance coaching. Just go to setantacollege.com, enter the code RS10 for 10% off tuition today. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder and click that subscribe button. And enjoy the show. Well, Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming back on. It seems like forever. Honestly, it's been, I don't know, 4 years since you've been on the Zealous podcast. The last time we connected on the podcast, you were at Loyola Marymount and kind of had your foot still in the door with the LA Sparks. And but since then, everything's changed. You've gone from coast to coast. How about bringing us up to speed, if you don't mind? What happened with Coach Kelly Dormandy when she left LMU?
So then it must be 5 years because I walked away from LA Sparks in 2020. It just got to a point where I was doing 2 jobs for 6 years, and it was difficult. And it was a serious challenge, and I wanted to be able to put all my eggs in one basket, and I knew LMU was the place to be at that time. So in 2020, I hung it up with the LA Sparks just to take on my role at LMU. But fast forward through COVID and it all, in 2022, around January of 2022, I received a phone call from the current head coach, Kadani McAlpine. He is the head coach for UGA women's soccer. He was formerly the USC women's soccer head coach for, I believe, 8 years. I got to work with him for a number of them. He had told me when I left, when the opportunity comes, I'm going to give you a call. And I didn't think much of it at the time, not to say that I didn't believe him. I just didn't know if he would ever leave LA or if any other opportunity would open up where he'd be able to bring me with him. And sure enough, he called and asked if I'd be willing to come join him. And Rocky, I'll be honest with you, it was probably the most difficult decision I've ever made in my career and for my life.
So, what do you mean?
I loved LMU. I was so incredibly happy. It was the best stop along the journey. Surprisingly, I don't think I expected it to be what it was and for me to enjoy it the way that I did, because I was always chasing the next opportunity, and I thought Power Five was the end all be all. And in order to feel validated by the industry that I needed to be at a big time school chasing and winning championships. But the amount of impact and influence I was able to have on the kids there and the people that I got to work with, it was like none other. But at the same time, I was growing incredibly burnt out. And I knew that. And I'm now embarking on year 15 in the industry as a college strength coach. And there had come a time where I thought to myself, okay, is this going to be my life and the only thing that I do from sunup to sundown every single day? And I think COVID was impacted part of it. And I'm the type of person who, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it 100%. I don't believe in 80-20. So I poured my heart and soul into it, but it just wasn't something that could last, that I continue to do day in and day out. And I felt like I just needed to hit reset. I needed to try to remove myself from Los Angeles, the hustle and bustle and the stress that comes with LA, walk away from LMU, go to the East Coast, get back close to family, friends, and really kind of assess everything for what it was and figure out what I really wanted to do without worrying about what was my next step.
And how did that work out?
I wasn't there very long. Athens, Georgia was a very tough. Athens, Georgia was a very tough place for me to live, man.
Well, I
The
gotta
job
say too, I
itself.
mean, I got to agree with you with COVID. It shook the foundations of anybody in our industry, how about shaking the tree, and all the fruit that wasn't clinging strong fell away. So kudos for staying through all of the chaos and figuring out a way to keep on going. 15 years is a commendable length of time. And as far as I'm concerned, you're a young legend. You're already have so many accolades in your resume that it is just so impressive. And for you to wake up and do the same thing again and to change the lives of some young athletes, I mean, I feel like that's a gift that keeps on giving.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Georgia wasn't your cup of tea, though.
No, Athens, Georgia was tough. I'd lived in the South once before and I didn't love it, so I probably should have remembered that to begin with. But my dad loved it, right? Like my dad saw me more in the year and a half that I was at Georgia than he had seen me in the 10 years that I was in LA. It was easy for him to travel down there, take in soccer games, take in gymnastics events. The people that I got to work with on the soccer staff are incredible human beings. I consider them family. Nobody I'd rather work with, but being in your middle 30s, being an African American female, in a predominantly college town was a tough place to be, especially given that Atlanta was about a 90-minute commute away to either get there or get on a plane to go somewhere else. So I was there for a year and a half, grateful for the opportunity, helped the women's soccer program get back on the map. And I was visiting LA because I would visit and venture to LA on my vacation time. And I was in LA in May of 2024, staying at my friend's house in Santa Monica. I was en route to go to Gold's Gym. I stopped at Starbucks for a coffee and I was doing the usual scroll through social media, and the USC women's basketball job popped up on my social media account. And I thought to myself, this can't be real. Something must be wrong with this posting, because I had known that they had hired a new coach in Lindsay Gottlieb recently, and she had brought somebody with her, and he was coming from out of the country, so I couldn't have imagined that he had left. So I reached out to one of the associate head coaches, Coach Beth Burns, and said, "Hey, I saw this. Is this real?" And she said, "It is." She had filled me in on some of the circumstances of why the individual had to step away for some family matters, and said, "Listen, I know you have a good network of people. If you can send any candidates our way, would be greatly appreciated." And I wrote back, "What if I was interested? Dot dot dot." Within 10 seconds, I had a phone call from her. She said, are you shitting me or are you for real?" And I said, "I'm certainly interested, but I would like to learn some more about the opportunity. Obviously, Coach Gottlieb doesn't know me. If it's a good fit for both of us, then I'm interested. But let's go through the whole process and see what all happens." Well, fast forward about a month or so, I was in France training a tennis player of mine for the French Open when I interviewed on Zoom for 6 hours in France and was offered the job a
Six
couple days.
hours?
Yeah, offered the job a couple days later, and said, "Well, I need to do my due diligence to go back to Georgia and put in my 2 weeks and pack up my life, and then I'll be out that way." But fortunately, my life for the most part was actually already packed. The funny thing is when I moved to Athens, I found a fully furnished apartment, and that in and of itself kind of sent me a sign like this may not be your long-term landing spot. So I
Sure.
signed a year lease. I only had a couple suitcases and a couple of my rings and valuables that I didn't want to put in storage. Um, and when the opportunity came, I said, "Well, I'm pretty much already packed. So I called the company and said, we're just going to ship my stuff back to LA." And I moved everything back. And here I am. I've been back with the program for a year and a half now.
Fantastic. You mentioned rings, so I'm assuming there's two, at least in my mind, a ring for LA Sparks 2016 WNBA championship and Pac-10 with USC last year. Am I right on?
That one I'm looking at. I have it on my stove. The Sparks one is the one that I carried with me on the
Nice.
airplane. Uh, it slept at my bedside next to me every single night, because that one is worth a good amount of money. So that one, I said, I can't pack this one up, not knowing where I'm going to be And sure enough, had I not taken it with me, it would have stayed in storage for a year and a half.
Okay, so just hey, first of all, both of us are New Englanders. You went to Springfield College. I was just north of you at UMass Amherst there for a little while, and then we find ourselves on the West Coast. And across this journey of our careers, we pick up things and we find them very useful, and we'll put them in our toolbox. So, in the time that you were at LMU and you were with the Sparks, and of course your time at Georgia, and with the sports that you were overseeing there, strength conditioning and so on, and now at USC, what did you bring with you to USC? Like, can you pick out the big buckets if you don't mind? Like, what did you take with you to USC? What do they benefit from getting Coach Dormandy on campus?
This is my second stint at USC. So I was there
Right?
for six
Yes.
years previously from 2012 to 2018. And I will say, I think the best thing I did back in 2018 was to leave from USC, to go to LMU, to gain experience that I hadn't previously had. I think it opens your eyes when you become a director, when you go to and work at a school that may not have the same financial resources as a USC or a Power Five school. And for me, I gained a lot of experience hiring people and doing the due diligence of doing your homework and what's important to you when you hire people in the circle you surround yourself with. And for me, it was not so much about how talented of a strength coach you are, but for me, it's always about what kind of person are you? What are your core values? What is your character like? So I learned very quickly and early on as a director that I wanted to surround myself with great people. And I think that's why it was so hard for me to leave LMU, because I went to work every single day alongside people that I considered family. And I think that's really important for strength coaches in general, is to attach yourself to coaches or staffs of people that you, one, for get along with, but have similar values and a passion and a vision, because you don't really feel like you're going to work when you go and spend all this time with people that you grow and cherish relationships with, and who I can honestly say, like, I love the people that worked alongside me at LMU, and I would do anything for them. And to this day, I stay in touch with them, and I help mentor them through the process of interviews and such at other opportunities. So that was for one. I gained a lot of experience wearing a lot of different hats: hiring, managing, delegating, the difficult conversations of accountability and holding somebody accountable when they may not be living up to the standards that you present your staff and expect your staff to abide by. Um, and understanding that that's part of the process, and learning and growing, and that everybody's not like me. I think that was one of the biggest pieces. Is I'm a very type A personality. I'm incredibly intrinsically motivated. I don't need somebody to push me. I can push myself. But realizing that everybody may not go about life in the same way that you do, and that's okay. And for me, when I was at LMU, I realized, like, okay, if I am this personality, then my staff is going to benefit from having personalities that aren't like me. So I surrounded myself with incredibly high energy, upbeat personalities that were super young. We're just attacking every single day with gratitude, and coming from a place where they were just there to help people, because I had to be so tunnel focused on all the policies and procedures that were going on, especially during our time in COVID. Um, I do think it's okay to know when you're not in the best of spaces mentally, and to step back and take a break and say, you know what, like, if it's whatever's meant to be will be. And if me leaving LMU and walking out of LA, if that's the last time I ever live in LA, well, then maybe I wasn't meant to stay in LA. And maybe that season was what it was for 10 years. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way. But another door is going to open, and I need to be okay with accepting that new challenge and opportunity that's in front of me. I think that is something that I've always struggled with, of the unknown. I've always tried to position myself for the next piece along, and that the next stop along the journey with the stop before, and starting to check all of these boxes. Whereas now, instead of forcing, things, I'm just letting it flow, and whatever's meant to be and whatever opportunities and doors open up will open up for me. And I think it was a full circle moment when this opportunity literally fell in my hands that day in May. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe this was how the journey was supposed to go. And I was supposed to realize that, yeah, I stepped outside of my comfort zone. I left someplace that I was happy, but I knew that I was becoming potentially a little bit burnt out. And maybe had I stayed, maybe I would have been even more unhappy. So stepping away and going to Georgia and being surrounded by people that I truly love and getting to check in with family was a great thing for me during that year and a half. And hey, here's an opportunity for you to come back to LA. And how lucky am I to get an opportunity to return? Because a lot of people often don't get those opportunities.
True, true. Well, really well said too. Okay, so there's quite a few things I want to kind of pick on or unravel, I guess you'd say, is your hiring process. Like, you didn't instantly become a Zip Recruiter employee. You had to learn how to interview. Did you use personality traits or tests, enneagrams, or some type of quadrants? Like, what tools did you use to help you figure out these are the type of people that really want to make up this team that will complement me, or better yet, fill in the gaps where I may not have those strengths?
So fortunately, when I left USC, there had been two guys that had interned with us that had done a spectacular job. And I knew that either one of them would fit in right away. And the thing is when I stepped into the role, it was myself and one other strength coach, Jordan Alcantar, who's now the director at LMU. He and I held down 18 teams at the very onset
Whoa.
because, yes, when I stepped in, somebody else had stepped away to pursue another opportunity. So it went from a staff of three to a staff of two. But the beauty of it is that I had the opportunity to build my staff anew from the start. And so Dylan Lowenstein, he was local at Laverne, and I called him and I said, "Hey, here's a situation I have. I have a position open. Um, Jordan and I are holding down 18 teams right now. I don't know what all the breakdown is going to be in terms of sports, but I know that I want and I need your personality." And I said, "So I know you're be forgoing this last year, doing your graduate degree at Laverne, but you have an opportunity to get a master's degree here at LMU as part of the perks for being an employee here. Are you at all interested? Do you need to sleep on it?" He said, "Coach, I'm interested." On the phone. I said, "Okay, well, here's the deal. You're gonna come this whatever day it was that week, and I'm gonna interview you. Bring some clothes, say you're prepared to train, bring your enthusiasm, your passion, all of it. Be you, and let's get this thing rolling." Shows up, "Coach, where do you need me?" Said, "I've got baseball lifts. Got 40 guys. We're testing. We're going to do some squat testing." I said, "If you can get this team going for the next hour and spot every single one of these guys while I watch depth and so on and so forth for safety, the job is yours. Do you think you can handle it?" He said, "I got you." And so he was all about it. He jumped right in. The guys loved him. Just super outgoing personality. And I knew he was young, but I knew that because of who he was as a person and his character that he held, that the inexperience didn't matter. He would do everything in his power to become a better version of himself and a better strength coach because he was a go-getter and a high achiever. And
Love it.
that's who I wanted on my staff and who I wanted around my kids. Because at the end of the day, yeah, we're in a position where the expectation is to put our kids in a position to be successful in whatever sport it may be. But the reality of the matter is it's not it's bigger than sport and it's about life. And the majority of the kids that we work with, and especially at a school like LMU, their sport careers are going to come to an end when their college careers come to an end. And for the select few
Yeah.
that go on, that's great. But for the majority, the 95 to 99% who don't, well, whatever skills we instill in them in terms of our day to day grind and grit and resilience and integrity and all those things, those are the skill sets that they're going to carry on in life. And those are the types of people that they're going to be.
Yeah, and speaking to other friends and colleagues that have similar roles as yourself, they've said the same thing in terms of going beyond the coaching and the gym and the weight room to becoming either a big sister, an aunt, or in some cases like the mother figure and the matriarch within. That these athletes are coming to you with with issues outside of the sport, and it's just an opportunity to help guide them in the life that they're going to take on beyond, because only a handful, maybe at the most, of your athletes are actually going to progress on to a professional world. Most of them are, this is it, this is not the end of the line, but in terms of like high level competition, this may be the end point from which they'll start to springboard onto other careers in life. So how is that for you, to be put in such a situation that you are a guardian, a consort, a, a maternal figure, if you will?
I love it. I have realized that I know it's my passion, but more importantly, I think it's my purpose. And the more you can realize that the way you show up impacts and influences people for life, um, that's the beauty of it. That's the golden ticket, right? Is I love when I see kids come back to me years later. It was alumni weekend here at SC, and some of my players who I hadn't seen in 6 to 8 years, and Coach D, and I remember running the arenas and how tough it was, but after I did that sort of thing, like everything was easy, and you realize like, okay, you're making a difference beyond the court and beyond the soccer field and the pitch and whatnot, and they really carry these things and these core memories on with them in life.
That's awesome. Yeah. Quickly share a similar story. My son, a few years back when he was 14, he and I paddled across Monterey Bay from Santa Cruz to Monterey on paddle boards across the deep canyon there. And it's just shy of 29 miles. And we trained pretty well. And right near the end, I mean, we're at like mile 23, and he just starts breaking down. He couldn't stroke another to save his life at that time, tears streaming down. He just wants to jump in the escort boat that was kind of nearby. I'm like, dude, we're already there, man. You've already done the journey. You've gone the distance. Now all that's there is just a formality. And as we pulled into the bay near Fisherman's Wharf, we stopped and we just sat on our boards and just took in what it was we had just accomplished. And I said basically the same thing you just did was, you can put this in your back pocket for the rest of your life. And when you feel like the odds are against you and you got your back up against the wall, you can remember the things you had to go through and you persevered. So yeah, I love stories like that. So okay, then my next question is, you're at USC and you are the director of basketball performance, or yeah, the head director of basketball performance for USC women's basketball. Is that the actual, what's the official title? I don't want to get it wrong.
Director of sports performance for USC women's basketball.
Okay. So that is your one sport. You've gone from 18 freaking sports with probably over 100, 200 athletes to now 16, 17, somewhere in that
Fif-
neighborhood.
15, 13 last
15.
year, 15 this year.
Tell me the difference there. What's that like? More stress, less stress,
It's
easier
stressful
in
in
some
different
ways?
ways.
It is. How
It's
so?
just it's different stress. It's just I think a lot of people think, oh, you only have 15 athletes, you have one team, like that'll be so easy. And but no, it's just a different type of stress.
Yeah.
For one, the basketball season is the longest season of any college sport. The demands from the start of off season in the summer, there are only three teams to my knowledge, or three sports to my knowledge, that are mandated to do summer training, and that's football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. So my
Mm,
kids go to school in the summer. We're up early. Both these past 2 summers, training started at 7 a.m. So I'm waking up at 5 a.m. They're like, Coach, why are you waking up at 5? We wake up at 6:30. And I said, well, first of all, you shouldn't be waking up at 6:30, because I know that you cannot fuel yourself and hydrate well enough between 6:30 and 7 o'clock to be prepared for my training. But we'll work. That's a work in progress. We'll continue to work on that. And I laughed and I said, well, there's just something about being awake for the first hour of my morning that I thoroughly enjoy to myself as I'm getting older. But there's something about being up and being and functioning and being productive when most people are sleeping. I just love it when it's still dark out.
What's the
Um,
first thing you do? What's the first thing you do when you wake
I
up?
make my bed. I
Oh,
make my
you're
bed.
okay. Just like the Navy Admiral. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. And then,
make the
because
bed, and
I know you've
then
got a habit.
I make the bed. Typically, I open up my blinds because that whole wall next to my bed is all windows. So I open up my blinds. Then I'll walk out and I drink at least 16 to 24 ounces of water with Element. So I start the day with electrolytes. It depends if it's a pour over coffee kind of morning or espresso, one or the other. I mean, you got to caffeinate to dominate. So I have my 1 cup of coffee in the morning. I typically will journal something of sorts, whether it's in a manifestation journal or if my mind was running over the course of the night, or in the summer, I'm often thinking about motivational tactics. So I might be writing down some of the things that I want to speak to the team about. And then there are times where I'll go through a cars routine. I'll do controlled articular rotations, and I'll kneel on my living room floor while I have my coffee, and I'll start the whole series, and I'll do all my neck rolls and shoulder. I'll work all the way top down, and then I get dressed and I get ready to go, and I walk out the door. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, my clothes are all laid out in the order that I'm going to put them on. Like, that's just the type of person that I am. And I know some people think that that's crazy. But the night before I lay everything out, my bag's packed, I'm ready to go.
That's awesome. I love it. We're
Are we
similar
similar?
in certain ways. Yeah, yeah. I get up at 4:20, and I don't hit the snooze button. I get right up. Sometimes I've got somebody else in the bed with me, so I'm not going to make it because she'll get trapped in under the covers. But I get up and just go out into the other room, and I get the teapot going because if you want to dominate, caffeinate. Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that later. And then I get my brain working. I actually do 4 puzzles. There's that are basically, I do a quick little mini New York Times crossword puzzle. It takes me usually a minute or less. If it takes me more than a minute, I'm not really happy with how the day's
Was
already
that?
going.
Do
You
you
know,
time yourself? You
yeah,
put
there's
yourself
an
on the clock?
automatic timer there. And then there's my workout partner, and I do these things. So I text him the results. So when he wakes up, he can see what he has to beat. So there's a little competition there. I do Wordle. I do this thing called Square Word and Connections. Those are my 4 things. And then I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I make a short gratitude list, and they can't be used in the past. I've got to come up with something that I've never had written down before. And then I check out my calendar, make some notes. I might do some writing in regards to blogs for websites and so on, and then jump in the shower and get going, start my day. So, and honestly, it's a common practice with the coaches in our industry. I've spoken to so many people about that, and it's like this is how you start your day with purpose, and you start your day with the first thing. It's a completed task. You're already
Yeah.
successful in making your bed, so now everything else is just icing on the cake. That's pretty cool. Okay,
I
so
think a couple
back,
things. I think
yeah,
this is why the universe has connected us. But I also think in our industry, like, I tell people, they ask me, "Are you introverted or are you extroverted?" I'm like, at work, I'm extroverted because I have to be. But when I walk in these doors in my house, I try to breathe, relax, and reset. And there's just something about having that first hour of solitude to
oh,
myself where I feel like I don't owe anybody anything. And the
it's my
only
time.
person I have to carry about is me, and that's my time. So that first hour and my workout, those are the 2 times over the course of the day that's me time.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And I feel the same way. I'm introverted when I get at home, extroverted everywhere else. And it's just that's how we are. That's what coaches do. So you come into USC, you've got yourself 15, 16 players or so, but you've got a new coach there that you necessarily haven't necessarily kind of worked with for long periods of time. This is something new. And with all new coaching comes a culture. And so, how was that coming back to USC in a potentially new or different culture? Was that something that you could slide into? Did it require a little effort on your part, or how was that?
With the kids, I think it was a very easy transition, especially because I had the summer to get their buy-in. And I had talked to Coach B and said, "Hey, you know my personality and the way that I approach things. How do you feel it is best for me to approach this?" And she said, "Be Coach D. They will love Coach D. They need Coach D." Because in the basketball world, your head coach and most of your assistants are on the road recruiting in the summer. So the mainstays and the people that see these kids day in and day out at home in the summer are myself Coach B, our associate head coach, she stayed back, and one of our skills coaches. So, and our athletic trainer. So those are the 4 people that are around the most. We might have one like team practice a week, but outside of that, it's very individual based and strength and conditioning driven. So I walked off the plane and drove straight to my team meeting. It was a Friday afternoon. Training was meant to
Wow.
start on Monday at 7 a.m. And I had reached out to coach. I said, Coach, so grateful for the opportunity to return and work with you. Can't wait to get this thing rolling. I know as of right now, we're looking to start at 7 a.m. Monday, but I would really love to address the team just to go over some basic standards, expectations, and so more importantly, so they can just meet me and put a face to the name before we start Monday morning at 7 a.m. And she was like, absolutely. Can you make it work? I said, I'll drive from the airport straight to the team meeting. Drove straight to the team meeting, and she had introduced me, and I had my ring on, my Sparks ring. And so they walk in and they're like, oh, nice ring you got there. So I took it off and I said, all right, show of hands. Who wants to go pro and who wants to be a WNBA champion? And some hands went up. And I said, all right, well, I'm gonna share my ring with each of you so that you can get a feel and get a look at what this thing looks like. But I'll tell you right now, it's going home with me. So if it gets stuck on any of your fingers, we're gonna have a problem. So that kind of like broke the ice a little bit. And I think because I had worked in the WNBA and Candace Parker had written a testimony about me returning to LA, a lot of them were so just bought in. And I got up in front of the group and I did something that I've learned to start doing over the course of time as I've evolved, which is, hey, I'm going to introduce myself and you're going to introduce yourselves. And here's some of the things that I'd like to know. But I want you to ask me a question. You're open to
Oh,
ask me a question about whatever you
right
want.
on.
And it turned into this just amazing like first date with them. And I mean, these weren't cookie cutter. It was like, I mean, I had 3 transfers from the Ivy Leagues. They're like, if you could give your younger self any one piece of advice. I mean, they were throwing some heavy hitters at me, but it was great because they got to see that I was human aside from being their coach. And I think right out of the gate, we built a really great relationship. And I had made a comment to the effect of, here's the standard and expectation. Here's my challenge for you guys as we progress into these next 8 weeks of off-season training. There's one Pac-12 season left. There can only be one Pac-12 champion. I challenge you to be the last ever Pac-12 champions. It's not going to be easy, but I promise you that the work that we put in as a group in this offseason is going to put us in a position to have the success that you guys desire. So let's go get it. And from that day moving forward, it was bought in. Whatever I said, there were days we went to the Santa Monica stairs and I've implemented Filthy Fridays, which are
Oh,
days where they have no clue what's coming and they just have to show up in certain attire, and some of it's team competitions and upperclassmen versus underclassmen, just to challenge them physically and mentally and prepare them for what's coming. Because oftentimes these freshmen that come in, everybody's the best when they're in high school. And then you get to this level and you think it's going to be an easier transition than it really is. And so just presenting them with adversity along the way of the course of the summer and making sure that working on our communication and our teamwork and our discipline and details. I'm a very detailed strength coach. If we miss a line and somebody changes direction with the right foot when it's supposed to be left, the rep doesn't count. And I tell them, some of you are mad at me for holding you accountable, but here's why I do it. Because when the game's on the line, in an Elite Eight game to go to the Final Four, because we were 4 minutes away from going to the Final Four, and coach has one opportunity, one play call, we're down one. I need every member on this team to do the right thing and do what they're supposed to do and whatever coach draws up to give us a chance. Does it guarantee that we're going to win the game? No. But we sure as heck aren't going to win the game if everybody isn't in it to win it and gives everybody a chance to be successful. And so I said it boils down to discipline and detail so that when that one opportunity does present ourselves, that we're giving ourselves the best chance possible to win.
sweet. I love it. All right. So you spoke of this earlier. The length of your season is only compares to men's basketball and football because in football it's actually a shorter season, than
Football's a
basketball,
shorter
right?
season.
But between men and women's basketball, it's the longest seasons, and therefore the greatest opportunity for wheels to fall off, for injuries to occur, and for the amount of load that these athletes are enduring. And that's not just weight training. I'm not just thinking training volume and load there, but training volume on the court as well. How do you, aside from having a crystal ball, obviously, how do you look at the training volume, and how do you adjust it based on the practice schedule, the travel schedule, game schedule, all that? How, I mean, I know there's no perfect recipe, but you've found something that enables your team to be in the top five nationwide. So what's going on?
So first, I will say we had a great plan last year, and then moving to a new conference changed the whole plan.
Right.
So adversity 101, right? But I will say we use an athlete monitoring system. Our players were catapult in every practice, every drill, every game. I am tasked. So in my role of director of sports performance, I oversee all aspects of strength and conditioning, and I also serve as our sports scientist. So that also ties
Really?
into, yeah, I only have 15 athletes, but I hold both responsibilities with all 15 athletes.
Do
So
you have grad
I'm
students that are over that you have with the catapult system and they're reporting to you, or do you just directly go to the results?
I do most of it. Last year I did it all.
Wow.
I felt it was important for me to do it all for a couple of reasons. One, I was coming in with a new coach, and I really just wanted to gain her trust through our results. So I just put my hard hat on, stayed in my lane, did my job, made sure that I could provide her and present her with a really fit team going into preseason. Um, we have a 40-day preseason in camp, and they'll get fitter and get more basketball specific fit with scrimmages and practices before the first game typically falls around November 1st. But I say that to say I do all of our sports science on the back end in terms of our monitoring. So our players wear catapult units, which is GPS units, in practice and in games, and I'm there tagging on an iPad every single drill. If a player's in it, they're in the drill. If they're not, I pull them aside and bench them so that we can go into every single drill that coach has. So I have like a drill archive, and I can bring up a drill and pretty much give her an idea of what the player load or what the intensity might extrapolate. Now, the amount of time that she does it one day versus another might be different, but I still have a ballpark idea of what our highest load and highest intensity drills are, what drills bucket into moderate, what drills bucket into low. So what I do with that is I send her an email every single week about a practice periodization recommendation. So I take our games and I work backwards.
Got it.
So it's different this year because our game one is Sunday and our game two is Wednesday. So our off day is Thursday. But I take our highest game days and then I plug in high, moderate, or low intensity practice days depending on where the day falls in relation to the game. Now, I'm also looking at, okay, let's say, for example, we haven't gone yet, thankfully, knock on wood, but hypothetically speaking, we went to 2 or 3 overtimes last year against UCLA, and that is a drastically different player load than a traditional game and the effect that that has on our players. So I'll lay out a recommendation for her just to give her some informed information about how I might go about it. Typically, we'll talk about it. I've learned that in the time that she walks from her office up the stairs to our practice court is the best time, the best window of opportunity for me to get a minute or 2 minutes of her time, just to give her an idea of where some players might fall or where they may be in terms of fatigue monitoring, because we use valid force plates as well.
You
So
do. Okay.
I've gathered baseline jumping metrics. We've done a number of different jumps, but I've decided that counter movement jump for us was going to be the one variable that we were going to do day in and day out. So twice a week on our lift days. So we lift Mondays and Fridays. Mondays will counter movement jump. Monday is following a Sunday game. Friday is before or following our Wednesday game, so that I can get a good idea of CNS monitoring. And so I do utilize jump height a little bit, but I've really looked at contraction time and RSI, so reactive strength index. Oftentimes, a fatigued athlete can still muster a jump height that is not too far off their baseline. And if it's incredibly far off, well, then that's a red flag for me, and that's giving me a lot of valuable information. But I'll look at their contraction time and how quickly they can get off the ground to produce force to jump. Their reactive strength index, so their jump height divided by their contraction time. So the higher it is, the better in terms of CNS monitoring. So if I have an athlete that is typically in the high 0.6s and 0.7s, but is suddenly falling down to 0.5, well, then that for me is a flag of like, okay, this athlete's not monitoring. Maybe I should do a little bit of a check-in, like where are we at? And just kind of you go and you learn. This is where building relationships with 15 kids, you spend a lot of time around them, so you know how to approach certain athletes and different athletes, and in what context, and what questions to draw and how to deliver those questions to get the information that you need. Some of them will be very forthright and, coach, I'm slammed. I got a lot going on and school and exams and this, that, or the other. And so that also plays a factor. And others will be like, coach, I'm fine. Like, don't tell coach. I don't want to sit out anything. And so you just build these relationships and learn that, and you educate them that, hey, it's not about sitting you out of practice. It's about making sure that I'm peaking you for the biggest moments. And practice might look a little bit different for you today, and that's okay. But in all the drills that you're in, I want you to go for it. And if at any point in time you're dragging, like, I'll be able to look at the numbers and see if maybe instead of you going in every other rep, you go in every third rep. So we'll take some strategies like that to manipulate some time on bodies if we feel like players need it. And my coach is very receptive to science-based information. She comes from the NBA. So she really loves the why factor and present me with the information and the data to show me why I should be making A, B, and C changes and altering my practice. And I'm game for it. But you've got to be able to show her the proof as to why I'm making the recommendations that I'm making.
Oh, right on. So monitoring and using counter jumps and catapult and all that, but what about monitoring their fueling and their sleep cycles? Are you able to do that too with Aura rings, or is it a subjective questionnaire you throw at them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis?
So we have a full-time dietitian that works with all of our players one-on-one. So we do, particularly in our off season, we'll do weekly education in terms of what should performance plates look like, and carbohydrates, and refueling after training, refueling before training, and what your plate needs to look like in terms of carbs, proteins, and fats. As we get closer to travel, really preaching about how we can stay hydrated. We do hydration testing at least weekly so that we have an idea and a gauge of where we're at. And I think it's particularly important that we do that every single week, given the travel and the demand that we have on their bodies when it comes to that. So they're getting a lot of nutritional education. They get collagen shots, beet shots, customized smoothies post training. So
Wow.
um, they're very well taken care of. I think some of it gets repetitive and old, but at the end of the day, it's just the reminder of, hey, this is what is best for peak performance, and this is why we do these things. And then as far as sleep, we aren't quite there yet. I have a couple players that are on Whoops. I may have an opportunity to move forward with Whoop or a ring for the team. Trying to figure out the logistics on that, trying to figure out which one, if there's one, might be better than the other. I think my biggest concern is them remembering to wear it day in and day out. Like when it comes to these trackers, and I have one, and I have a Whoop that has not left my wrist for the last 365 days. Somebody gifted it to me, and I have fallen in love with it. And I have a couple players who have it as well. And so I have a player who will texts me in the morning when her recovery is above 90%. Hey, Coach D, here's my recovery. What's yours looking like today? So it's a great tool for interaction with them, but also education. That same player was going through a string of days where she couldn't get in the green. And she's one of my more health conscious players when it comes to fueling and hydrating. She said, Coach, I go to bed at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'm getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep every single night. I just don't understand what's going on. So I've helped her, looked through her data over the last couple of days, and I can't remember exactly, but it was a time period where we had like a string of travel and high intensity days and games and so on and so forth. And I said, okay, I know you don't want to do this, but we have a string where we have a couple off days coming up. Can you back off for me? Can you just go get some shots up, do some yoga or restorative or active recovery? Get outside and go for a walk. But don't go run the Santa Monica stairs. Don't go try to do shuttles and 22s and all the things that I know you love to do. But those are all the things that your body just doesn't need right now. And I said, on top of that, focus on your hydration and fueling. Nix any and all fried food. Get some good complex carbs, some lean protein, some healthy fats. Check in with me in a couple days. Hit me up, Coach. I'm back. I'm in the green. Let's go, baby. It worked. So
Right on.
I love the tools, and some of them are into it more than others. So I think some of it's just getting the buy-in, but I also think once the kids see the results, they're more inclined to buy into it and to make it a habit in their daily lives.
Ah, that's great. Now, you are in a tough division. I mean, you're going against UCLA twice in the season, and currently they're they're badasses. As equally badasses as you. Don't get me wrong. I'm comparing apples to apples right now for sure. How for the competitive edge, what's your secret sauce? I mean, you've already told me quite a bit with what you were doing with the athletes and monitoring fatigue and just the buy-in that you've created in the culture, but X factors.
X factors for me, grit is our word.
Right on.
And it stands for grind, resilience, integrity, and tenacity. That is the word that is on their sheet every single day when they walk into the weight room. Um, that is kind of our mantra as we train and as we prepare in hopes that we'll have a very successful season. We don't look ahead to what is in February. We keep the main thing the main thing. The only focus for me right now is going 1-0 on Sunday. I know we have one loss. I couldn't even tell you right now what our record is. It's probably somewhere around 15-1 or 16-1. And I'm not saying that to dismiss it. I'm incredibly proud of what this team has accomplished so far, but we have very lofty goals and we have a long road ahead of us to get to where we want to be. And for us, it's focusing one game at a time and keeping everybody locked in to doing what they need to do to put the team in the best position possible to be successful.
Yeah, a friend of mine says it's next play mentality. You're not going to focus on whatever you did on the last play, whether it was a success or not. You're just going to focus on the next play, what's right in front of you, and nothing else matters. You're living in the moment. And that sounds like exactly what you're doing. Okay, so we can obviously follow USC women's basketball on TV and online, but how do we follow Coach D?
I believe it is KD underscore Coach D. I changed my Instagram handle when I came to SC. Coach D was taken, so I had to manipulate a little bit, but I wanted to get in there. But it's KD underscore Coach D.
Beautiful. And I know you're living in the moment, so you don't want to look down the road, but will we be seeing you at USC through the end of the season and maybe next?
You'll be seeing me at USC for sure through the end of the season, and as of right now, I will be here next year.
Ah, I can't tell you how joyful this has been to kind of reunite and to just be witness to your career path of success and it doesn't stop here. I know it for a fact. Just who you are and how this is. I just can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you so much for reaching out and having me on. It's always a pleasure. And hey, if you get down to LA, I'm encouraging you to come check out a game.
Well, I'll be there for sure.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Zelos Podcast. Thanks for listening. And thank you, Kelly, for coming on, as well as USC for making this happen. Good luck this season underway, making it to the Final Four, hopefully. Remember, you can go to my website, rockysnyder.com, for blogs and podcasts and online educations, a whole bunch more for you there. Just check us out. While you're at it, check out SatantCollege.com. Remember that code RS10 for 10% off tuition today. Have a great week.